breaking and entering, drunk and disorderly, law and order. A former prosecutor and a defence lawyer, not your typical pairing. And the result? Conversations about crime and punishment that are guaranteed to get you thinking.
Welcome to Justice Matters with Joe Crowley and Lizzie Green, a brand new weekly podcast. Our episodes are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify and YouTube. Check out our Instagram for clips at Justice Matters Pod. Enjoy the episode. This episode contains descriptions of domestic and family violence and intimate partner homicide. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, Lizzie.
Hello, Joe.
How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I am well. Now, I think we finally, after talking about it in a number of episodes, got to our episode on Jared Baden-Clay.
Yes. Well, we have been wanting to talk about this case for a long time, and it's been 10 years since he was convicted by a jury of murdering his wife, Allison. And I feel pretty confident that both Jared Baden-Clay and Allison Baden-Clay are names that will be familiar to many listeners.
Yes. Certainly Queensland listeners will not. I mean, I think it was the front page of the Courier Mail for at least a week, if not longer. And it went to the High Court. So certainly people outside Australia, it was quite a seismic shift in one aspect of criminal law because of the High Court decision.
Yes.
I hope it's broadly known.
And I think possibly it was one of the first really high-profile domestic violence cases to sort of reach the public attention. I mean, obviously there have been so many DV murders, but this one really captured the media and also the hearts of the public, I think.
Yeah.
When I was listening to the news and they're reporting on the fact that one woman every 4 days is being killed in Australia through violence, I sort of thought, let's have a look at Baden-Clay and this case that grabbed everyone's attention and see, have we made much progress in the last 10 years in combating this kind of abuse and
well, statistically we have, so we're doing better than we were 10 years ago in terms of intimate partner homicides, yes.
Well, we'll come
34-year
to the
low
statistics. Well, we'll see. But anyway, so this is, for the most part, a story. The story of Jared and Allison Baden-Clay. So just as an overview to start us off, on April 20, 2012, Brisbane man Jared Baden-Clay, who was married to Allison, father to 3 little girls, called the police at about 7:30 a.m. to report his wife Allison missing. The search for Allison began immediately, which was noted at the time to be quite unusual for a missing person search to, get in progress so fast. But it went on for 10 days before Allison's body was finally found. In those 10 days, Jared made emotional public appeals for his wife's safety and return and the location of her. And it was definitely treated as a missing persons case as opposed to a criminal investigation at the start. But on 30th of April, a canoeist discovered a woman's body on a creek bank under the Colo Bridge crossing at Ansted in Brisbane's west. The next day, police confirmed that this was in fact Allison Baden-Clay, and so began the homicide investigation that eventually led to a conviction of murder in relation to Allison, the convicted person, her husband Jared.
Yes. Yes.
So let's start at the beginning. Okay, we look at this couple. So Jared and Allison got married in 1997. They'd been described as a dynamic couple. Jared was a real estate agent. Allison was an executive with Flight Centre. They had 3 beautiful daughters, Hannah, Sarah and Ella, all of them 10 years or younger at the time of Allison's death. And outwardly, it looked like their lives were happy, normal, successful. Jared in particular was a bit of a mover and shaker. Reports say he rubbed shoulders with politicians and wealthy entrepreneurs while selling prestige properties in Brisbane's affluent western suburbs. He was a proud man. He wasn't hesitant in putting himself forward. He talked up his apparently illustrious family history and his self-made successes. He'd been asked on occasions to speak at high schools as inspiration for students in those schools. Allison was, by all accounts, a wonderful person. She graduated from Ipswich Girls Grammar School. She went to university. She loved ballet, both watching and performing it. She spoke 6 languages.
Wow.
She was crowned Miss Brisbane in 1993.
Wow.
Importantly, she loved her daughters and she loved being a mum. However, beneath this seemingly loving and happy family facade, the marriage of Gerard and Allison was not a happy one. There are various reports, and I've read a lot of different reports or, information about these cases, and this is an amalgamation of all of them. So some are from the family, some are media, some are from trial transcripts.
Okay.
There are various reports that claim Gerard had numerous affairs throughout the marriage, reports that Allison had knowledge of this, that she did suffer from depression. There was information that Gerard was controlling of Allison, isolating her, belittling her, and using her for his own advancements financially. So murky undertones to the marriage. So let's go to the day that Allison went missing. At 7:15 on April 20, 2012, a 000 call was made by Gerard. He was calm and polite on the phone, and he said, "I don't want to be an alarmist. My wife isn't home. I don't know where she is." Elaborating further, he told the 000 operator he didn't think she had returned from her morning walk. He said he had last seen her the night before when he left her watching the footy show and he went to bed. And when his alarm went off at 6 a.m. that morning, waking him up, his wife was not present in the house. This report triggered, as I said, a really swift response from the police, and officers arrived at Baden-Clay's home by 8 a.m, so super fast. Baden-Clay told police that he was frantic with worry. He said he had tried texting Allison at 6:20, showing police the text which said, "Good morning, hope you slept well, where are you? None of the girls are up yet, love G." He told police he got no answer. He waited another 20 minutes before he checked the Find My Friends app on their phones. He sent another message. "Al, getting concerned. Where are you? The app doesn't say either. 2 of the girls are now up. I'm dressed and about to make lunches. Please just text me back or call. Love G." So this was at 6:41 a.m. He then called his dad, and both his dad and his sister arrived at his house soon after. His sister, Olivia, went and searched the neighbourhood for Allison. She spoke with various school mums, a council worker, a groundsman, but no one had any information. She also walked down to the nearby creek. She found nothing there. Meanwhile, Baden-Clay had driven along Allison's apparently usual walking routes. Then he drove around Brookfield, the suburb they lived in. He then went home to meet the police. So very, very quick response to Allison not being there at 6 a.m.
By whom?
By Gerard. Yeah. So police said he was initially very happy to answer their questions. He provided information about their financial situation. It was a question they asked early on.
Really?
Yeah, his finances were in trouble, he said.
Sorry, but I wonder why they asked the question.
Well, I think they were asking all questions because they also
asked all questions. Did they ask his favourite colour? I mean,
they asked many questions.
Right.
They also asked about his relationship with Allison. Was it good? He did grow impatient with the questions, saying he just wanted to go out and look for his wife. And mid-morning, the police asked Baden-Clay if he'd come down to the station to talk with them a bit further. He agreed, but then once he got to the station, he refused to speak and asked for a lawyer or asked to contact his lawyer. Meanwhile, police are searching for Allison. They're out on the streets, they were knocking on doors, they were calling hospitals, and no one could provide any information. Allison was not found that day. So let's see how the investigation progressed, okay? Looking back, police say that there were immediate signs that he was or should have been, Baden-Clay should have been a potential suspect. The biggest red flag was the state of his face when police first arrived at his house in response to the 000 call.
Yep.
So the officers who attended his house, Constables Kieran Ash and Leah Hammond, later said that as soon as he answered the door wearing his work clothes, they were concerned because he had 3 gouges running down his face, weeping scratches that extended from his right cheek all the way down to the bottom of his jaw. When they referred to them, he told police he'd cut himself shaving.
3 times.
I've never shaved my face.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Never shaved my face. But it does seem unusual, particularly for an extended cut. Like, surely if you start to cut, would you not lift the razor up?
There is a circumstance I can imagine doing one like that, because you can be shaving quite quickly. So
dangerous.
Yeah, doing 3, that's I'm not sure how that happens.
Okay. So anyway, they didn't believe him, didn't say that to him, but they called for backup. And when he was asked if things were okay with Allison, he said that they had been having a rocky time because she had discovered he'd been having an affair.
Wow, he just says that straight out of the gate.
Through it.
Okay.
Those first police officers also did a search of the bathroom for any tissues or towels with blood stains that might reveal evidence of those shaving cuts, and they found nothing. So right from the start, there was this, fear of something more sinister, I guess, even though it was characterised as a missing person case.
Sure, okay. Interested. I mean, that search was presumably was consensual. He says, sure.
I think so.
They said, we just want to look for evidence of these cuts on your face.
Could they use the bathroom?
Okay, well, anyway.
I don't know.
They didn't find any evidence, so it doesn't go anywhere. But
looking back, it's been said that also of concern were Baden-Clay's movements the day after Allison was reported missing. So to start with, he didn't join Allison's family at the police command post when the search resumed on day 2. He did call in and speak with police briefly, but then he left again. And he went to a doctor. He attempted to get a medical statement from this doctor that the cuts on his face were from a blunt razor.
Okay.
The doctor was skeptical, and after examining him, she didn't think that was possible, and so she refused to give that report that he wanted. He then had to attend the police station where he was swabbed for DNA, and his face, neck and chest were photographed, and there were other injuries
I remember this,
on the body as well. There was injuries on on all of his face, neck and chest. The shaving cuts on his face, there were scratches on his neck that he said had been caused by a caterpillar.
That's right, yeah.
A furry caterpillar when he'd been watching his kids' sports day. And there were scratches by his right armpit, a large red graze on the left-hand side of his chest, and a cut on the palm of his right hand. He said, when questioned, they were all self-inflicted and that he had cut his hand when he was fixing a light bulb.
Okay.
So the plot thickens, maybe. Then that afternoon, after he left the police station, he went to another doctor, to a different medical centre, and asked for a medical report about the face injuries again.
Okay.
Unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next day, the police wanted him to come back to the station for a more complete physical examination. Never happened because on his way to the police station, he drove into a concrete pylon and was taken to hospital.
Okay.
Police now think perhaps that was an attempt to cover up his old injuries with new ones. Other suggestions were that it was a failed suicide attempt. So we don't really know what he was thinking at that stage.
No, maybe he was just under a lot of stress and lost control of his car.
Maybe. As the police investigation continued, evidence came out about exactly how much financial trouble Baden-Clay was in. His real estate business was really struggling. He'd moved into larger premises. He had bigger overheads, but he wasn't increasing his revenue. In 2011, the year before, he had borrowed $90,000 3 times from 3 different friends.
Right.
Plus, he had approached another contact for a $400,000 loan. So he was really in dire straits financially. throughout the investigation, it was also revealed that he had had affairs during his marriage, starting back in 2006 and continuing right up until Allison's disappearance. They found that he had set up an online profile under the name Bruce Overland.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
On a swingers website called Adult Friend Finder in 2010.
Yeah. Don't pretend you don't know about that website, Lizzie. Come on.
Well, clearly you know about it.
No, I've never heard of it, but I'm going to certainly go and look it up. No, I'm not,
thinking
of course.
2010 must be like pre-Tinder and that sort of thing.
I'm guessing that's right. 2010, that's sort of the...
So he was in at the ground level with that kind of...
start of the smartphone, I think, 2010.
And look, I know it's not really relevant, but on that website, he declared himself married but don't want to be, looking for some sex on the side.
Okay. Well, it is a swingers website. You're hardly going to be saying, I'm happily married, not interested in cheating on my wife, you know.
Well, I don't like the duplicity of it. Anyway, the latest affair that he had been having was with a former employee of his, a woman called Toni McHugh. And look, to be fair, she knew that he was married, but gosh, she suffered as a result of all of this as well. I mean, you don't want to be the other woman, but she was the other woman of a murderer.
Yeah.
So
So
they had been on again and off again since 2008. Baden-Clay's former business partner told police Baden-Clay had a public face which was ethical, moral and upstanding, but in reality, he was just deceitful.
Wow, okay.
Baden-Clay told police that Allison had asked him straight out if he was having an affair with McHugh, so she had well-founded suspicions, and he admitted that he had, but he said that he would end it. And so he said he did end it in September 2011. He told his staff in his office that he'd been having an affair, but that it was over.
Okay.
He wanted to take accountability. Weirdly, he also told the principal of his girls' school that he'd had an affair, but that it was over.
Okay.
But by December 2011, he was back into the affair.
Okay.
So he ended it for a short time. So Allison had kept a journal, and that private journal revealed that the marriage was struggling. And it had been, in her mind, definitely since 2010. We know he'd been having affairs before that.
Yeah.
Allison blamed herself. She was not aware of the multiple affairs. She thought that it was because she was battling depression and that was the cause of the problem in the marriage. She had gone on to antidepressants, which seemed to be helpful. What the police also discovered was that at the time that she went missing, she was meant to be attending a real estate conference on that day she went missing. And she fully intended to go. There was evidence she'd gone and had her hair done the night before. She had talked about it, and her journal entries suggested that she planned to ask Jared some questions about his affair with McHugh after she got home from the hairdresser.
Yeah.
Now, Baden-Clay, if he was asked about that affair, would have been in a state of panic because he'd just found out that day that McHugh was also attending the same real estate conference that Allison was going to the next day, and he was in a panic about them speaking, seeing each other.
Because he had restarted the affair.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay. This all was, peripheral information that was uncovered throughout the investigation. Then on day 10 of the investigation, Allison's body was found 14 kilometres from their home, and it was clear that she had been in the water for some time. Now, Baden-Clay was charged with her murder 2 months later. He steadfastly maintained his innocence the whole time. However, turns out he had engaged a criminal defence lawyer within hours of reporting his wife missing. He contacted the life insurance company regarding collecting on the policy on Allison's life the day after her body was found.
Sure. Can I just posit some alternatives here? Some of the early questions he's asked by the police are about his financial affairs, and they go and look in his bathroom to, see if he really did cut his face when he was shaving. It's not inconceivable that he realised he was probably going to be a suspect early on, so it would have been sensible to get a lawyer early on. And if he's in some significant financial trouble, then finding out about the life insurance policy
The
would
day
be,
after.
well, it would be,
Cold,
you could see
callous.
you could see why he'd be motivated, extremely motivated, if he's owing, 3 nines of 27, 270,000 to 3 different people.
But if he's innocent, like he said the whole time, it's not. To me, that is not the conduct of someone who has just found out that their spouse has been murdered.
No, sure. We've talked before about the difficulty in sort of judging how people react to certain situations.
This is not, did she cry enough? Did she not cry enough? This is, he's got it on the phone to say, when can I get my hands on the life insurance money?
No, you don't know exactly what he said. But, I mean, usually the discussions about, well, you can't judge how people react are in relation to women. So we've talked about Lindy Chamberlain and how that was very unfair, that she was judged because they felt she wasn't sort of sad enough or something. So, I mean, it equally applies to men. You don't know how men are going to react. And he is under a lot of financial pressure. So, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying another theory, which is equally likely, is that he is so panicked about his financial situation that really is as much front of mind as the fact that his wife's, passed away.
Well, let me tell you some more.
Okay.
So he had also contacted the insurance company regarding a different policy in Allison's name on the 12th of April, which was the week before she died.
Yep.
He was told he didn't have the authority to communicate with them about that policy.
Yep.
And he made another query regarding her life insurance policy on the 17th of April, which also was prior to her going missing. And there's more. I love the evidence that was revealed in this case.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
I have seen miscarriage of justice cases where all of this stuff about motive really becomes the central theme of the case. And motive is, and they turn out to be miscarriage of justice cases. I think if you focus all your energy on motive in a difficult murder case, you're really, ripe for, getting the wrong answer. I'm not suggesting they got the wrong answer in the Baden-Clay case.
I think we need to be clear. You do think that he's guilty.
I think that he's guilty. I just can't understand how they got to murder. I really can't.
Okay.
I sort of can, but I'm not entirely convinced.
All right, but so I want our listeners to know you're not suggesting he's innocent.
No, but I'm very skeptical of some of the evidence that they ran. I really am.
Well, let me tell you. So he was charged 2 months after her body was found, and he was remanded in custody, and he, of course, applied for bail. Now, as you know, police often outline the Crown case at a bail hearing because one of the things that the court will look at is the strength of the Crown case, because if it's a weak case, then remanding someone in custody could potentially be unfair because the prospects of conviction are so low. So, conversely, if it's a strong Crown case, more likely that it's justified to remand someone in custody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So there was plenty of evidence listed at this bail application. So we have, of course, the injuries to his face, which expert evidence, your favourite, says were not consistent with a shaving cut. There was blood in the rear seat of the accused car, which was identified as Allison's.
Yeah, how much blood? I always wondered that.
Well, it was found to be of a sufficient quantity that there were 2 runs of blood coming down from the seat to the floor. And there was a blonde hair stuck in the blood stain. So I guess to give it some kind of temporal.
Doesn't give it any temporal anything. I mean, presumably Alison Baden-Clay goes in that car and her blonde hairs are in the car.
But to be stuck in the blood.
It could have floated around when somebody shut the door.
Sure, could have. He admitted to driving that car the morning of the 20th of April, which is the day the police allege that her body was disposed of. So that was part of it. The financial investigations revealing Baden-Clay was over $1 million in debt, and that debt was due in June 2012.
Right. This is April 2012. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And didn't the hairdresser give an affidavit who'd done Alison's hair the night before?
About what they'd discussed?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And what did they discuss that was relevant to a bail application?
I'm pretty sure it was about her intention to question him about the affairs.
Right.
Yes. As far as I know.
Okay.
The provision of 4 different accounts by Baden-Clay of Allison's walking habits and routes. So he told police, his sister, a friend of Allison's, and Allison's parents that she walked at 6 a.m. or 10 p.m. and identified to them various favoured tracks. He then said he didn't know where she walked, and then said she wasn't actually a regular walker. So it was all very confusing.
Yeah.
The forensic investigation of his phone, and this is one of my favourites, revealed that on the 18th of April, so 2 days before he reported her missing, he searched the phrase "taking the fifth," which led to results including self-incrimination, which he then accessed that search result. On the 20th, the morning she went missing at 7:09, he called the police at 7:15. He searched the specific term, self-incrimination, and then at 7:14 attempted to access the Queensland Police homepage before calling 000 at 7:15. So he could have been looking for a number with that one, but still.
Yeah.
Also, further investigations revealed that his iPhone had been connected to a charger at 8:29 p.m. on Thursday, the 19th of April. At 8:45 p.m. that night, it was removed from the charger. And on the 20th of April at 1:48 a.m., it was again connected to a charger and was then on charge until 6:18 a.m. He had told police he went to bed before Allison the night before, and that he had slept all through the night until his alarm went off at 6. Don't you love that?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's certainly, the use that technology can be put to now.
So good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Liar.
He should have searched lies as evidence of guilt, I think.
Yeah. He should have
Might have been more
searched
relevant for him.
how to avoid getting tricked by your iPhone.
Yeah.
Look, now not as evidence in the case, but of note, I thought, was that after Allison's death, Baden-Clay continued to maintain contact with McHugh, who he'd been having the affair with, but he would call her from a public payphone near his office. So he's sneaky. McHugh had told police that he rang her and told her they should lay low, and he would contact her using his online sex persona, Bruce Overland, just bringing him back into it. Police found communications between the two of them, one of which from the 3rd of April claimed that he would be separated by July 1 so that they could be together. He was promising her that he would leave, or that he would live with her.
Yeah.
Again of note, Baden-Clay lodged a claim for the life insurance, even before there was confirmation of the identification of the body.
Yes.
And he urgently sought a death certificate for Allison and immediately lodged a claim as soon as the certificate was received. So I know you already have told me you disagree with this. But
I don't disagree with it, but I'm just saying an alternate way to view those facts is that he's under such incredible financial pressure. He wants the money to pay his debtors, which are, going to fall due soon.
I don't know. The only experience personally I have of this is after my mum died. And I know, it was like a year after that Dad was still, winding up financial stuff. It was not a priority for him.
No.
And that wasn't a murder or even unexpected that she died.
Presumably your dad didn't know $1 million was due in 2 months' time.
No, I know, but it says something about his priorities.
Sure, it absolutely says something about his priorities, yeah. Whether it's a motive to murder, I'm not sure, but...
Okay. Anyway, bail was refused. Now, interestingly, he had loyal friends and obviously his family who believed in him. 2 of the mates he had previously borrowed $90,000 from each were, on this occasion, willing to stump up serious cash for any bail surety.
Wow. I wish I lived in Brookfield with people who just got, if 90 grand is not serious cash.
Well, one of them was willing to pay 50 grand for a bail surety. The other one was willing to chuck in 10.
Wow.
Yep. But obviously they didn't have to because he was refused bail. He remained in custody for the duration of his trial in the Supreme Court. It was a lengthy trial.
He's never got out of jail. He went to jail and he's never been out.
Yeah, he's never been out.
Yeah.
The trial heard from 72 witnesses.
Yeah.
Baden-Clay also gave evidence.
Yeah.
On the 21st day of the trial, the jury of 7 men and 5 women found him guilty.
Yeah. On which day of the trial?
21st.
Yeah. How long had they been out?
I don't know how long they were deliberating.
Interesting.
So he was sentenced to life imprisonment, obviously, because it was a murder conviction, so mandatory life imprisonment.
Here in Queensland, eh?
And he was ordered to serve a minimum of 15 years without parole, which is actually the earliest parole eligibility for a murder charge, which
that's interesting.
Was kind.
It was 12 years ago now that was, I mean, I would be surprised if any judge now would give it 15 year to be a 20-year minimum, I would have thought.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do now.
Oh, we're going down a rabbit hole now, are we?
Not yet. Okay. I am, dumbfounded by the front of Baden-Clay. So I wanted to just detail his behaviour during the investigation.
Yes.
I think really it's the type of case you could quite fairly expect to see on a Netflix thriller, Yeah,
you're pitching it, are you?
No. But I also think it really paints a portrait of him and his character. So Allison's reported missing on the 20th of April.
Yes.
On the 23rd of April, her parents made a public appeal for help to find her. And at that point, Baden-Clay was not, according to police, a person of interest. So they said that to the media.
Okay.
On April 24th, Baden-Clay spoke with media outside his home, saying he trusted the police were doing everything they could to find Allison and reminding everyone that he was trying to look after their 3 little girls. He again spoke to the media on the 28th, thanking the public for their support and saying his priority was the welfare of his wife and their 3 girls. Mm-hmm. On May 1st, the day after Allison's body was found and after the police confirmed it was now a murder investigation, Baden-Clay released a statement saying that he was devastated by the loss of his wife, and his primary concern now was to provide his 3 daughters with some stability and normality despite the unrelenting media barrage.
Yeah.
On the 2nd of May, police tell the media they're confident they will find Allison's killer, and Baden-Clay asks for privacy.
So is that before the body was found? The Queensland police said they were confident?
No, that was the day after.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Baden-Clay at that point asked for privacy and to let the police push forward with their investigation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Allison's funeral was held on May 11th, and he was then charged with the murder on June 13th, remanded in custody. His lawyers told the media that he was devastated to be charged and would vigorously defend the charge. And then he applied for and was refused bail.
Yeah.
He characterised the Crown, or his lawyer characterised the Crown case as weak and circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
On the 5th of September, the court gave Allison's father control of her estate, removing it from Baden-Clay's control.
Mm-hmm.
On December 14, he applied for bail again. And on this occasion, his justification for changed circumstances, because in order to apply for bail more than once, you have to show a material change of circumstances, said that Allison had been taking antidepressants and that opened the possibility that she had committed suicide.
Okay.
He said that therefore weakened the Crown case, but the judge dismissed the application.
Okay.
And then July 2014 convicted.
Yes.
So what I thought was interesting, the trial judge talked about that ploy of painting Allison as depressed and, potentially suicidal, because Baden-Clay's father also gave evidence about her use of antidepressants and what he and his wife said they observed about her behaviour and that it was concerning and all of this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the trial judge addressed this tactic, and this is a quote: "You have insinuated that mental illness may have led to drug overdose or suicide, and besmirching Allison's memory in that way is thoroughly reprehensible." I liked that.
What you haven't mentioned, I'm not sure you're getting into it, is the difficulty that the prosecution case had. So the lawyer describes it as a weak circumstantial case. It is absolutely a circumstantial case. And I certainly wouldn't describe it as a strong circumstantial case. I'm not sure I'd say it was weak, probably sort of somewhere in the middle.
Why not strong circumstantial?
I don't think it's very strong at all, because the problem that they have is they find the body, but they can't, because of its level of decomposition, determine how Allison died. And so as soon as you can't get a cause of death, then it's very hard to get an intention to kill.
Well,
so
we just had a whole episode.
Yes.
On murder convictions where the body was never even found.
I know. And I've said I have some issues with them. I've said on this podcast, I think it's a red flag and they should be very careful about prosecuting in circumstances where there's no body. Second, slightly less red flag, a pink flag, is where you've got a body, but for whatever reason you can't determine the cause of death. Because we always reverse engineer, not always, but it's often reverse engineered. The intention to kill is reverse engineered from the injuries to the body because, for example, somebody's been stabbed to death. So you don't stab someone 16 times unless you've got an intention to kill or do serious harm. So as soon as you don't have a cause of death, then you don't know how the person died. You can't then work backwards to work out what the intention was. And so I think that
in this case, intention has to be sort of given more credence because of the disposal of the body and the, like you don't dispose of a body if she's accidentally died.
What are you talking? I don't know why you would say that. I mean, people, again, let's not judge how people would react in stressful situations. You have a wrestle with your wife at the top of the stairs. She scratches your face. You push her. She rolls down the stairs, and in the course of doing that, dies. You go, oh my God, she's dead. Oh my God, everyone's going to think I murdered her. I better dump her body and pretend that, she's gone missing. I mean, that's completely conceivable. So you're saying the only people who try and cover up murder deaths are people who've actually done the murder. If it's an accidental killing, nobody bothers covering it up. They're like, it was just accidental.
Would not be common. Like accidents happen.
Yeah, accidents happen. I don't know. I'd like to see some stats on it, but I don't think it's any less conceivable than.
I love how you ask me for statistics when I don't actually have them, and then you poke fun at my statistics when I do.
I'm just hoping there's some criminal law statisticians who listen to this who can just send in stats that I want to see. No, look, I think I don't see how it is any less conceivable than trying to cover up somebody that you've murdered, trying to cover up somebody you've killed.
But it's a factor that can be used to establish intention.
Yes, it on one view of it. So you look at the evidence, you go, the inference I can draw from the fact that he disposes of the body is he is trying to cover up the fact that he has murdered her. I'm saying an equally plausible inference is that he's disposing of the body to try and cover up from the fact that he killed her, but without an intention to kill.
Yeah, but I mean, it's always open. Like in a famous case of Winner, the judge said, you will not be able to get into the mind of the accused to know what they were thinking, but you are able to look at all of the facts and draw inferences.
Yeah, but when is the case where the driver is going along, pulls across 3 lanes of traffic and hits a cyclist, and the question was, did they intend to do serious harm? And it's like, he pulled across 3 lanes of traffic to hit the cyclist. Okay. Clearly he intended
and he lied to police and he hid the body and he...
But again, all of those lying to police is consistent with trying to cover up a murder that he's done. Well, not a murder, a person that he's killed accidentally.
Maybe I shouldn't have been too quick to tell our listeners what you believe, because I don't think I believe what you believe.
Okay.
All right, let's keep talking about because that wasn't the end of it. Like he was convicted. He was sentenced to life.
Yes, and then we go through the legal.
Then they appealed.
Yes.
Which I think you probably support from the sounds of things.
I was all in favour. So they appealed to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal looks at it and says the jury couldn't have got to murder. They should have only convicted of manslaughter. The evidence just isn't there. Reasoning in the sort of way I've just been reasoning in terms of the equally plausible inference is that he was doing all of this stuff because he was trying to cover up the fact that he had caused the death, but it didn't give evidence of intention. So that's what the Court of Appeal did. And so...
Okay, but how do you feel about the fact? So yes, I mean, we'll talk about the appeal a bit, but this appeal also included the suggested hypothesis that he had unintentionally killed her during an argument and then covered up the death out of panic.
Yes.
But that was a complete turnaround from the defense position at trial, which was based on him not having had anything to do with her disappearance and murder.
Yeah, and so this is where the problem comes in there's no intention to kill. It's not insurmountable, but it is an absolute problem, and it's what the High Court eventually latch onto. So at his trial, he gives evidence in his own defence, and he said, "I had nothing to do with Allison's death," and he sticks to the story that she went out for a walk and never came back, and I didn't see her since. Absolutely. And so the Court of Appeal deal with that in the way courts deal with that. They say, if you do not believe the accused, fine, put that to one side, because it's not about, the accused proving themselves innocent. The prosecution bear the burden of proving the guilt of the accused, which means just ignore everything the accused has said and focus on what the prosecution have put to you, and work out whether you think that what the prosecution has said means that you could convict of murder. And the jury say yes, and the Court of Appeal says no.
That's a fundamental flaw, that he's now just, changed my story. Didn't work at trial, so let me try this version.
Well, when he changed, okay.
He did. He changed his story.
I know he changed his story, but, we're lawyers. I mean, if I was his lawyer, I would have just said, listen, you nutcase, this is what you need to argue. So how about you give me those instructions?
And you say, it's a red flag that they couldn't work out how she was killed. Defense counsel also argued that there were no injuries on her body consistent with an intentional killing.
Yeah.
And that the scratches on his face may have been signs she was fighting for her life, but they didn't reveal why she had scratched him. And then said, and plus, there's never been any evidence that he'd been physically violent to her in the past. And I'm like, well, what's the relevance of that?
We literally have recorded a podcast where you have talked about the importance of, putting in evidence of past sexual offences.
Sexual offences.
Well, okay, you can't have one rule for one. In a
situation like this, where we know for a fact that you do not have to be physically violent to kill your partner with violence.
What? I don't know that.
Yes.
How can you kill a partner with violence?
Oh, Joe,
you can't kill a partner with violence without violence.
Until that occasion. There doesn't have to have been any prior physical violence.
For it to happen. Yeah, absolutely, that's possible. But it
often happens with victims of domestic violence.
Yes.
The act of killing has often been the first physical violence between them.
All right. Good.
So what's the point of this? It doesn't change.
My point is it is a relevant factor for the jury to know that he has never been violent to her before. That is relevant. They might discount it, but I don't think you say, well, there's no point telling them that. So absolutely is point telling them.
Well, anyway, so the Court of Appeal thought like you, and they decided that the murder conviction should be quashed.
Yes.
And that a verdict of manslaughter was more appropriate.
Yes.
Because they said there was a reasonable hypothesis he was innocent of murder, and the jury should have found as such. Is that their job?
Yeah, absolutely, it's their job.
Isn't it that if you appeal on the basis of a jury verdict, you're asking, was there no reasonable inference the jury could have drawn?
So, sorry.
They're not meant to substitute their preferred verdict for a jury verdict.
Sorry, well, no, but they can substitute what they think the verdict should have been based on the evidence.
But weren't they essentially saying, we think that he's only committed manslaughter, so we're going to overturn it? Not that there was no reason that a jury could have.
But in a circumstantial case, the prosecution has to prove there's no other, I won't use the actual test because it'll bore people to death, but there's no sensible, hypothesis. No reasonable hypothesis. Yeah, there's no reasonable hypothesis consistent with innocence. So there's no other sensible explanation except the one that the prosecution offered. But the Court of Appeal's point, and my point is, there absolutely is an alternative sensible explanation which fits with all the evidence, which is that he killed her without an intention to kill and then, disposed of the body, lied to police, and continues lying. There is reasons for him to continue to lie in the sense that he has 3 daughters. I mean, I don't know any of this. I'm just giving some sort of speculation. This is all theoretical, but he has 3 daughters, and so that the idea that his 3 daughters would know that he killed his wife, even though he didn't intend to kill, might be something that he doesn't want them to think. And
much better.
Well, he would prefer to be able to raise them, in a without them knowing that he was the person who caused the death of their mother. He would prefer them to think that she died in some other
whatever
way.
his motives. I still think, and wasn't that what the High Court said, that the Court of Appeal were taking on the function of the jury in a way that was not correct?
You've got me because I haven't read the case, the Court of Appeal, the High Court for a while. But my understanding was that the High Court said because he gives evidence in his own defence and because he says I had nothing to do with the murder, then there isn't another reasonable hypothesis consistent with evidence. You can't use he accidentally killed her line because he has himself excluded that.
Well, that's right. So they did definitely say that it was problematic. This is the High Court.
Yes.
That it was problematic that Baden-Clay relied on different arguments at trial and on appeal.
Yes.
The High Court held that the hypothesis on which the Court of Appeal acted was not available on the evidence. That is the unintentional murder hypothesis.
And it wasn't available because he had specifically said it didn't happen. Yes.
At the trial, he denied he'd fought with her, denied he'd killed her, denied he'd disposed of her body.
Yes. And
his evidence, being the evidence of the only person who could give evidence on that issue, was inconsistent with that hypothesis.
Yes.
Further, the jury, the High Court said, were entitled to regard the whole of the evidence as satisfying them beyond reasonable doubt that the accused acted with intent to kill or cause GBH when he killed his wife. And so I thought that was a decision that said the Court of Appeal saying the jury should have found him guilty of manslaughter was criticising that decision of the Court of Appeal. Like they did the jury's job.
I don't want to get into semantics about it. You may be right. I don't know. I haven't read it closely enough but I took them to absolutely be criticising the Court of Appeal for getting the wrong answer. But I understood that the issue was that the High Court felt the Court of Appeal needed to take into account that Baden-Clay denies ever doing that, so that once he's denied accidentally or causing the death of, but without intention, of Allison, once he's said that didn't happen, then that is not then a reasonable hypothesis that the jury can consider. And why defence lawyers like me were surprised and by that decision is because the usual process is that you call your client. If the jury doesn't believe your client, the jury are told, well, just ignore everything that person said and just then focus on what the prosecution said, because it's not a criminal trial is not a contest in evidence between prosecution and defence. It is entirely the prosecution's job to prove it. Yeah. So that, I just am concerned. I mean, it's been a long time since that decision's come down from the High Court in Baden-Clay, and the world, the sky hasn't fallen in on criminal defence. So, we're probably all okay. But my concern was that then in some senses, shifts the burden. It turns it more into a fight between competing evidence, which a criminal trial shouldn't be. It's not a fight of competing evidence. It's 100% the prosecution's job. If the defence decide to give evidence, that's great, but that you can completely discount what the defence say if you like, because you have to decide only on what the prosecution says. And the High Court have said, no. I mean, I can see why they say that, but I
particularly in a situation like this where he's the only person who could explain,
Yeah.
Anyway, so the High Court ordered that his conviction for murder be restored, and they still maintained that non-parole period of 15 years.
Yes.
And I just want to finish here with something the trial judge originally said about Baden-Clay's character when he was originally sentenced, because I like it.
Right, okay.
He said, "You have no criminal history, but you are definitely not of good character.
Okay.
You are given to lies and other deception. So much so that whatever you may say on any application for parole, 15 years or more hence, will need to be assessed with considerable scepticism."
I think it's pretty safe to say Baden-Clay is not getting parole at 15 years.
No, well, so I can tell you a little bit about him since his conviction.
Yeah, it's been in the paper, I think. Yeah, something. Yeah. What did he do in jail?
So a 2020 article said that while Baden-Clay was originally hailed as a model prisoner, he has now been banned from working as a carer in the prison, as he allegedly touched an officer inappropriately on the buttocks.
Wow.
This incident was caught on CCTV and showed Baden-Clay sexually assaulting the officer as he was lining up prisoners. Having that job taken away from him would have been quite a blow for Baden-Clay, because carer positions in prison apparently are much sought after as they're positions of trust, and they have long-term benefits in terms of lowering the security classification.
Yes.
Staff have described him as being over-familiar and forgetting his place.
Yes.
He wasn't charged for the assault of that officer. I don't know why. There were internal disciplinary measures taken, but it didn't come to court. Then in 2023, there were reports of Baden-Clay getting preferential treatment in terms of phone privileges. So an unnamed officer was reported as saying that he was sailing through prison even as a convicted murderer. It was to do with talking to relatives in Canada. So apparently you get allocated time, and he has, not just as a one-off, but continually been given the opportunity to have phone privileges outside of that time.
Okay.
So,
well, I don't understand, why this is even newsworthy, but you know, I mean, if you are in jail and you are behaving yourself, why shouldn't you get some benefit for that? I mean,
I know.
The prison officers have
tying off the story.
Oh, I mean, and he's sailing through jail. I mean, the guy can't leave the jail and is locked in his cell every night.
We've had this conversation about Martin
sailing
Bryant.
through.
Yes, all right. Anyway, his parole eligibility date is actually not too far off. 2012 conviction, 15 years non-parole, so 2027. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to put money down that he's not getting parole at 15 years.
The only other thing I wanted to say about the Baden-Clay case is to take it back to Allison.
Yes.
And so Allison's incredible family, and her sister in particular, took her 3 daughters in along with her own children and raised them in Allison's place. And I saw a photo of them recently in the media, and it really does tug my heartstrings, not least because my nieces were at the same kindy as these girls.
Yeah.
They were all wearing yellow in memory of Allison.
Yeah.
And they're all growing up now. You know, they look like beautiful girls.
Yeah.
Allison's family, and specifically her sister, Vanessa, have established the Allison Baden-Clay Foundation. And so from their website, the Allison Baden-Clay Foundation aims to educate the community about family and domestic violence and empower them to aid in prevention. Each year, throughout the month of July, the foundation launches their Strive to Be Kind campaign, which aims to raise awareness about family and domestic violence and encourage people to practice kindness in their daily lives. The foundation's latest campaign, which was launched at the end of last year, is called Toxic Love, and it aims to teach teenagers between the ages of 14 and 18 the signs or red flags of abuse, particularly coercive control within a relationship. So it covers things like technology abuse, emotional manipulation, sexual persuasion. It talks about the signs, how to break the cycle, and how to be an advocate for change. Vanessa, the sister, believes that Allison was the victim of coercive control, but wouldn't have even really known what it was necessarily. And if we think back 10 years, that is probable. That level of awareness of coercive control, at least, was not at the same level that it would be today. Like Hannah Clark, who was murdered by her ex-partner Rowan Baxter, Allison wasn't a victim ever of physical assault, and probably in her mind and her family's mind wasn't a victim of domestic and family violence as it was understood to be in 2012. And that's why, you know, this is so important that this foundation's bringing awareness. There was apparently Jared Baden-Clay used baby monitors to spy on Allison. He refused to let her control her own finances. He regularly insulted her appearance, all the while having his affairs on the side. And so, you know, it brings me back to my favourite topic of domestic family violence, and really we need to find a way to break this cycle of the crisis.
I'm not sure there's a crisis. Absolutely, we need to do what we can to end domestic and family violence.
Well,
yes.
I mean, you say we have a lower rate. But
the Australian Institute of Criminology says we've got a lower rate, but yeah.
I looked at statistics. So articles written when the Baden-Clay case was proceeding, 2013, 36% of all homicides between 2008 and 2010 were domestic related.
Mm-hmm.
Of those, 66% were classified as being committed by an intimate partner. And that sounds like a lot, but over that 3-year period, that was only 122 cases. We've already had one every 4 days.
Yeah, but sorry, one every 4 days you said women dying of violence, so that's not necessarily intimate partner homicide.
No, okay.
And I've really got some issues with those statistics. I'd like to see them broken down.
While we talk about domestic violence, another statistic I learnt this week, which, it's not really relevant, but I was shocked, is that of our female victims so far in 2024, there has been an Australian man who has murdered his mother once every month. In the last 5 years, there have been 28 women murdered by their sons, 23 of them adult offenders, So when we talk about domestic and family violence and people get all up in arms, it's not just partner violence, it's family violence. And the fact is that the vast majority of offenders are men. There are also male victims. I understand that. There are also female offenders. I understand that. But I can give you the facts. For intimate partner violence, 1 woman was killed every 11 days in the 2022 to 2023 reporting period. 1 man was killed every 91 days in that same period. Mm-hmm. Of those victims, most females were killed by an intimate partner because it was family violence, domestic violence. 3 out of 4, 1 out of 10 males were killed by an intimate partner. Even where the females were the offenders, in over half of all of those cases, there had been a previous protection order taken out with the female as the victim. So we know that female victims who do kill their partners have often it's been built up after a lot of abuse and they snap. So, anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. They're interesting statistics. I'm not sure they bear out that there's a crisis like you said.
I think we've got a problem.
Of course, any kind of violence
with
in
domestic
society.
and family violence.
Yeah, sure.
And whether it is intimate partner violence, our 1 every 4 days. We
don't know that that's 1 every 4 days.
I said whether it is.
Yes.
The rate of women dying is substantially higher than the rate of men dying.
Yeah, through violence.
Yes.
That is a factor of the genetic difference between men and women.
Well, and also I think it is indicative of a rise in your favourite phrase, toxic masculinity.
Okay, but that's not
misogyny.
borne out. Sure, that's not borne out by any of the statistics on the number of women that are dying in intimate partner homicides.
All right, well, we'll agree to disagree.
Which is always a good note to end, I think.
Yes, always.
Lovely.
Thanks,
all right.
Joe.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks for tuning into this episode. You can find links to the cases that we discussed in the description. You can also find a link to Guardian Criminal Law, and a big shout out to them for making this podcast possible.
The majority of criminal cases involve people, normal people like you, people like me, who find themselves in an unusual set of circumstances that would not usually occur in their life. My name is Mark Savick and I'm here to assist you with your criminal matter. I look forward to hearing from you and being of assistance to you.
If you're interested in clips, you can look at them on Instagram and TikTok. Just search for Justice Matters Pod. See you next episode.